Dead City is a follow-up spin-off series of The Walking Dead that follows the adventures of Maggie and Negan. A concept which I didn't really understand at the time it was announced because for some reason they announced it before The Walking Dead was over. But one single scene in the finale made this seem like a reasonable thing to happen. Unfortunately, this show proves my original fears and doubts to be completely valid because this show didn't work for me at all, even a little bit. Oh my god. But before I lose my mind and rip this show to shreds, because I love The Walking Dead, I want to talk about what this show did right, because it did some things pretty good. First of all, just the look and feel of the show was great. You could tell this had a bigger budget than The Walking Dead itself had per episode, because the set design was just fantastic. The characters were moving from place to place quite a bit, and there wasn't a location that felt bland to me. The Walking Dead was very often, we're just gonna wander through the forest until we find an abandoned building that we can take shelter at. And there's nothing wrong with that, it very much so fit the aesthetic of the show and everything it was going for, but Dead City is much more fast-paced and action-heavy, and it was really neat to see all these different sets creatively utilized for the action scenes taking place. There's this one episode with like a cage match against walkers that's hosted by just a really depraved individual, and then later on this set is reused as like a coliseum that gets filled with walkers, and we have to watch our main characters fight their way out, maybe get into the cage, try to fight walkers from in there, and then escape. They make excellent use of set pieces and props. There's cool looking vehicles with spikes all over them. The show looked good, is what I'm trying to say. The cinematography also felt a lot more inspired than The Walking Dead usually did. There are many scenes where it feels like there's very deliberate camera movement and awareness of the way everything is gonna look rather than just pointing cameras at the character to make sure we see things that happen. And I'm not saying The Walking Dead was always like that, I'm just saying that this show was much more consistent with that throughout it. Also, I think Maggie was really badass in episode 1. It was very entertaining to see that like each article of clothing she had was apparently also a weapon. There's two different scenes where she gets pinned down and you assume that like someone's gonna come along and save her because otherwise you don't know how she's gonna get out of it. And then she like kicks her boot and a knife pops out of it or something and she escapes herself. And I thought that was really fun and I wish they did it more throughout the other 5 episodes. The action overall in this show was a blast. When I was having trouble looking forward to what was going to happen in this show plot-wise, I knew that I had the action scenes to look forward to because oh my gosh, they were incredible. They really went all out with these action scenes and they seemed to be meticulously choreographed stuff. The scene I was talking about earlier about the Coliseum full of walkers felt natural. When characters escape from this massive horde, it doesn't feel like they're wearing plot armor or something, it feels like they actually fought their way out properly. The show isn't scared to be gory either. There's this one group of people that has this disgusting weapon that essentially latches onto you and then they pull it back and it rips off an organ or something. It was really gross, really surprising, and very entertaining throughout. And the second to last episode contains the single coolest walker design I have ever seen in the entire universe. And if you haven't watched this show and you intend on watching it, even though you probably shouldn't, and we'll get to that later, I'd suggest skipping this bit of the video because I don't want to spoil this. Like, I'll spoil plot stuff for you, but this is the one thing you can't have ruined. You need to see this for yourself. There's this one walker in the sewers that's like this amalgamation of a bunch of different walkers that kind of stumbled into and, I don't know, got stuck in each other. And it's this disgusting thing that basically acts as one giant creature, a walker king. And the whole thing is made up of practical effects. It's all puppetry and animatronics and it looks incredible for it. And I think it's the coolest thing that I've seen in The Walking Dead probably when it comes to, you know, just looking at stuff. And one thing I definitely appreciated when I started watching the show was how quick the pace was. The Walking Dead has always been a really slow burn of a show. Sometimes it was justified in exploring a lot of really interesting characters, and other times they were just throwing out filler. With this show, it was just go, go, go. We moved from plot piece to set piece to action piece, back to back to back, and it was really fun at first, until it became incredibly disorienting and highlighted one of the biggest problems the whole show has, which is the writing. All of the problems that I have with this show present themselves in the writing. This show has a tendency to jump from moment to moment without really providing any kind of context or justification for these moments. What I mean by moments is, in film when something incredibly climactic happens, just something that's gonna take your breath away or shock you or make you cry, things like that are the big moments that you remember, right? But much like a lot of superhero films now, the writers don't seem to understand that moments moments have to be justified in order to be impactful. If you just try to cram as many moments into like 40 minutes as you possibly can, none of them are gonna hit. I'll talk a bit more about that later. I was really worried from the very first episode when we got introduced to two different antagonists. The first one we're introduced to just kind of strolls into a room and starts exposition dumping onto everybody. He makes sure to thoroughly explain who he is, who he's with, how they operate, and why he's after what he's after to a bunch of people who already know all of that. And everyone just kind of stands around listening. It was annoying. And we see the second antagonist at the very end of the episode who is just comically evil, and that's it. That's his whole deal. He doesn't talk like a real person, he talks like a comic book character that I would have written when I was 12 and had just learned who the Joker is.
20 stories! New record, no?
And to sum up what's going on with why are Maggie and Negan teaming up, this guy who apparently used to work for Negan as his right-hand man and torture guy has now kidnapped Herschel, Maggie's son. So Maggie tracks down Negan and essentially blackmails him into coming along with her to try and get his son back because, you know, Negan can help with this guy that he used to know. This guy who kidnapped Herschel, his name is the Croat. He used to work for Negan as his main torturer guy until one day he went too far and Negan shot off his ear and he ran away. Now he seemingly has control of the island of Manhattan. He's running an organization of evil people providing sanctuary, like Negan did. You see what they're going for here? Also, Negan is wanted by that first antagonist guy for doing a bunch of murder to a group of people. In his defense, it was justified murder, but we'll get on that later. So episode 1 really scared me when I first watched it because these antagonists felt super one-dimensional and I wasn't that invested. But I thought, you know, they'll probably still do justice to Maggie and Negan. I mean, these are incredibly well-established characters. They have this huge wealth of episodes and comic books to look at to understand who these people are and how they work and why. Surely they won't mess that up, right? Negan's whole character is completely destroyed in episode 2. After finding this group of people who don't trust them at first, they get attacked by the Croats people. The group manages to escape, but Negan grabs one of the Croats people who had strayed from the group and takes him as hostage and walks back over to where the Croats people are. And I really had no idea what he was doing as he did that. I was like, what could he possibly be going for here? And I was even more confused when he started doing it.
Knock, knock.
So Negan gives this messed up, corny speech to these people and kills the guy that he took hostage to threaten them. And what the show's going for here is them saying, oh look, Negan has to turn into this bad guy in order to protect himself. Look, he's intimidating all these people to keep this group safe. But the whole scene just made me realize that the writers don't understand what made Negan so scary in the first place. When Negan first shows up in The Walking Dead, he has this entire posse of people with him. He has our main characters surrounded and on their knees, and he has complete control and power over everyone. He's with this huge group of people that completely respect him and treat him as the leader that he is. And because of that, he can say corny nonsense while still being intimidating, because anyone who acts up is gonna lose their head. But in this situation, Negan is just some guy. He's some crazy guy alone who has taken one of these people's guys hostage. And they're all just kind of standing there looking up at him like, who is this guy? What is he so crazy for? And you could argue that they did nothing at first because he was holding the guy hostage, but then he kills the guy. I'm gonna use specific language here so YouTube doesn't freak out. Negan cut the thing he was holding and was, dumping its contents out, and the people were still just standing there like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It's a good 10-15 seconds of that, and then he throws the entire thing over and it lands on one of them because they were just standing there. Basically, he successfully intimidated an entire group of armed men who came there just to hunt people down by making knock-knock jokes.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Butter. Butter who?
Yo, what?
Butter, get out your umbrella.
Somebody shoot this guy. Why are we listening to him? And then he turns around and realizes that Maggie was watching the whole time, and he just kind of stands there with his back turned to the group that he was just incredibly hostile towards. And then no consequences happen. I don't like this show. Negan continues to be really inconsistent for the next like 4 episodes. We find out why Negan was wanted for killing like 6 dudes, and it's because they had kidnapped his wife and done unspeakable things and then kind of left her to die. She didn't die, but he hunted down those men and they all did. Which, I mean, fair enough. But in the same day that he explains this to Maggie, someone in the group of people that's helping them finds the wanted poster for him and confronts him about it. So to be clear, this guy that's in this group of people helping them confronts Negan because the guy is worried that Negan might be a threat to his people, and instead of Negan explaining, no, I was just doing that because they did horrible things to my wife, like he did to Maggie the same day, he kills him. This makes sense and is in character. Yeah. You might be wondering, well, what's the consequences of Negan killing one of the people in the group? There aren't any. They never find the body. It's downstairs in the building they're all sleeping in, but they never find the body. And then in the next episode, Negan saves the guy who's been hunting him down the entire show twice.
God damn it. Believe it or not, I don't like leaving people behind to die. Behind you.
This show sucks. Maggie's character is kind of a travesty too, not to the same extent that Negan is with inconsistency, but it's still like, it's really hard to get a hold on what it is that she values, and she just kind of stands around looking at people like, that's most of what she does on this show. There's this one scene where she and a couple of other characters are exhausted, so they're resting by sitting down and leaning on piles of corpses, which is gross in its own right, but I guess that they just all also forgot that they've been in a zombie apocalypse for the past like 20 years.
Oh, two of them, they got bit. What? How did that happen? I couldn't have seen that one. I mean, what the?
So who's writing all this stuff? Eli Jorne. Eli Jorne is a longtime producer of The Walking Dead and has writing credits for 3 episodes from season 10. 2 of them are really good episodes. One of them is the episode where Negan tries to help a mother and child despite the efforts of this annoying kid who's in love with the idea of who Negan used to be for some reason. And the other one is what I consider the actual highlight of season 10, which is episode 12, Walk With Us. This episode had 2 of the best moments in these later seasons. They were incredibly shocking, but also really called for. Massive spoilers for season 10 of The Walking Dead, by the way. We had seen Negan working with the Whisperers for the past like 6 episodes or so, and we were never explicitly told what it is that he was up to, and we were like, is he just evil again? Is he just working with these guys because he wants to now? What's really going on here? We see Negan capture Lydia, who is a child and also the daughter of Alpha, the leader of the Whisperers, and there's this really tense stretch where we're worried that Negan is going to lead Alpha straight to Lydia to kill her. This would go against a lot of things that were previously established about Negan, but we're still on the edge of our seats because we're worried, is he that desperate? Has he changed that much? Is he really willing to let a child die to further his own self-interest? And then in a really shocking moment, Negan kills Alpha. It was a really shocking moment that made me gasp out loud the first time I watched it, but it was also so satisfying because it all made so much sense. Of course Negan was after Alpha's head the whole time. What else would he have been doing out there? There might have been times where he was getting lost in this darker side of himself, but he ultimately stayed true to the man he had become. He's a twisted character, but he's a consistent and ultimately a redeemed one. And this episode understood that. It had multiple big moments like this one that were just very satisfying and paid off things that had been led up to properly. Then the season kind of falls off because I guess they didn't know what to do now that Alpha was gone. Jorne is also credited as one of the writers on the season 10 finale of the show. Okay, I got this a little wrong. He's actually credited for episode 16 of the show. I am talking about the right episode. I just got confused because there was such a big gap of episodes after this one that in my head this was the season 10 finale, and it was the end of the Whisperers arc, so yeah, I'm talking about episode 16, which is one of the most anticlimactic episodes of the whole damn thing. It's an episode that, very much like Dead City, was just a series of moments that weren't properly built up to, and moments that didn't feel like they paid off. Beta was this crazy big bad character who survived being thrown down an elevator shaft, and he died so easily in this episode. The Whisperers, who have been this long-time threat to the group spanning several several seasons, who kidnaps like a dozen main characters one time and they didn't find out until they found their heads on spikes, who literally destroyed the kingdom, these guys were defeated, snuffed out like it was nothing. Plan goes off without a hitch. When you have seasons as long as this one, there is no reason to have a payoff for something like all of this to be so sudden. It felt like they were like, alright, we're done with the Whisperers. Can you kill them all now, please? That's the kind of writing we got for Dead City. To make all of my points crystal clear, I would like to break down the finale for Dead City. Well, the season 1 finale, because apparently they're making more. The first thing that happens in this episode is Negan breaks the heart of the kid he's been taking care of. It's an intentional thing. He says all of the worst possible things he can think of to say to her that will make sure that she wants nothing to do with him ever again. And it's supposed to be played off as like this noble sacrifice thing, like he doesn't think he'll be coming back from all of this, so he wants the kid to be cut clean from him. It just doesn't really feel earned. We've seen Negan interact with this kid in episode 1 and this episode, and also one interesting flashback. So we have no idea, you know, what's really being lost here. We don't have a good enough hold on the situation. We also aren't sure why Negan is so dead set on the mission ahead of him and also so sure that he won't make it back. One of the plot twists is that the Croat wants Negan back, and so he basically kidnapped Herschel to get Maggie to go get him. And Negan pieces this together out of nowhere. Like, he really does not have the information necessary to have figured this out on his own. There's nothing that should have led him to this conclusion, but he figures it out. And for some reason, he wants to go through with it all anyway, and so he pushes the kid away. The guy who's been hunting down Negan all season, who is now actually besties with Negan because he decided to do a monologue with him, takes the kid back to shore. It just cuts to them back off of the island, even though the whole premise has been established that no one can leave the island. The people living on the island are stuck there because there's no way to get off without getting killed or dying or getting caught or whatever. Then we see Negan and Maggie wistfully looking out a window, and Maggie just randomly starts sharing a story from her past. This is something that they do several times throughout the show with main and side characters, where people just kind of break into a monologue about their life before everything turns, as if it's supposed to establish some kind of character development or make us feel feelings, but it's really stupid, and it just feels like a waste of these actors' potential. Like, the people who play Maggie and Negan are both such incredible actors, and I hate just seeing them wasted on...
And I used to daydream that one day I'd go to New York, walk into that Macy's, become best friends with the real Santa.
After this, they're kind of walking around, and then they decide to fight to the death. Sorry, did that seem sudden? I agree. Through an exchange of glances that I guess is supposed to reveal that Negan now knows exactly Maggie's plan, Maggie just attacks him with a knife and they start having this fight, which is really well choreographed and interesting, but, you know, why is it happening? Why are you doing that? Maggie still needs him alive, by the way. During this fight, Negan gets fully stabbed in the chest. Maggie just... right in the chest. Just, you see that? You see that knife going into his chest? I guess they forgot about that because he's fine. Nothing comes from that. In the next scene, he's just kind of sitting around. I think they actually just forgot that he got stabbed in the chest. I'm not even joking. I think that they wrote this scene, they thought it would be cool to have him get stabbed, and then they forgot. This fight happens not because it makes any sense at all, but because Jorne thought it would be cool, and it's what he wanted to happen, and it's what he envisioned happening, and because he was so desperate to make this moment happen, he didn't worry about having any kind of build-up to it at all.
Maggie and Negan get into a fight. I think it's the fight we've all been waiting for. You know, we found an amazing location. That's a weird thing to say, but it was kind of a dream to see this fight unfold.
So yeah, the Croat shows up at this random location, and Maggie gives him Negan, and he gives her Herschel, and good job, Maggie, you did it. You got your son back. And then remember this guy, the least interesting character in the show? He goes back to where he's from, and the person in charge starts randomly giving a monologue that establishes that she's evil, and also is not how anyone in the real world would talk ever for any reason. She threatens his children. It's a whole thing. I love when they establish a new threat in the finale. We see Herschel and Maggie have a talk, and Herschel is a classic teenager who's angry as his mom, and he says to her, I felt safer back there, because he's, you know, mad at her for saving him from being kidnapped. I get teen angst. I do, but bro lost a toe. Bro was tortured and lost a toe, and he said, I felt safer back there, to his mommy because he's angry at her. Right? Better. If you're really gonna have him be that mad for saving him, make us believe it. Don't make him monologue the reasons that he's mad. Show me. Let me see. Y'all stuck. This all happened before the Writers Guild strike started, by the way. This is a Jorne problem, I think. Later in the episode, Maggie and Herschel are back home, safe and sound, and she starts talking to him in a monologue that actually feels really impactful. It feels like she's come around. She basically talks about how this Negan thing has been eating her alive and she's let it consume her and she really needs to let go. And I'm thinking, oh wow, she's really finally come circle. She's gonna finally let go. And she goes,
I don't know how, but this thing with Negan, I'm gonna finish it so that I can just let it go.
what the heck are you talking about? She just left him on the island to die or whatever. She doesn't really know, but she, gave him to the person that wanted him. What is there to finish? Do you want to kill him or do you want to save him? And how will either of those things bring you closure? I understand that she's like a flawed character, but like we've been through this. We kind of fixed this actually. What are you talking about? Then we go back to Negan and we find this silly lady who's in charge, and we find out her silly little plan. She's another comically evil character. She was established in the second to last episode, even though, she's like the biggest threat.
So in episode 5, we meet a new character, the Dama. I think this is our first hint for the larger story here, and the Dama seems to be at the center of it.
I love when you do that right at the end of the season. She sucks, she has no depth, she's another person who doesn't talk like a person, and her whole deal is she wants an empire as big as Negan's used to be, if not bigger, and she basically wants Negan to be like a politician, the face of the place, the guy who keeps people in line. Why is this? Because she's heard stories of Negan, so she's, bringing in an outsider who she's never met a day in her life to be the face of her nation. It's a silly little lady with a silly little plan, and what does she do to ensure that he won't betray her trust? She's like, here, take this box. It has Herschel's toe in it. I can go back for Herschel if you don't agree. So it's hard to keep track of because Negan was so inconsistent all season, but I think what they're trying to say is that even though Maggie wants him dead, he'll by any means necessary protect her son, including be in charge of this nation that he doesn't want to be in charge of. The son that they just let her go with, Maggie, the extremely capable assassin lady, who is now aware of the biggest threat's existence. And the show ends with this split screen shot of both of their faces, and the implication of that, according to Jorne, is that they are both trapped in this situation that they don't want to be in. I guess Negan's a little trapped, but I have a hard time believing that he couldn't escape if he wanted to, and also I don't really understand what's really tying him down to this. And Maggie's definitely not trapped at all. That's just some BS. She could let go all on her own, but instead I don't even know what she wants to do. I don't even know what she means by I have to take care of this, I have to finish this. Finish what? This show hurt me. This show hurt me to my core. I love The Walking Dead. I was excited for this show. I was on the fence about it at first, and then they brought me around, and then they shot me in the head. You need more than action to make a story compelling. If that wasn't true, I would be watching Marvel shows right now. This is supposed to be part of The Walking Dead, which used to be one of the most respected dramas on all of television. There's so many loose ends, and everything is set up to make you excited to watch the next season of the show. And as a massive super fan of The Walking Dead, the only person I know that has seen every single episode of it, a loyal, long-time fan of The Walking Dead, I have to ask, what the hell makes you think I would watch another season of this?